Si toca salir, toca cuidarse. Campaña radial bilingüe, español-ixil, de prevención del COVID-19 en Guatemala, con formato de educación-entretenimiento.
If you have to go out, take care of yourself. Bilingual radio campaign, Spanish-ixil, for the prevention of COVID-19 in Guatemala, with an education-entertainment format. In the Ichil area of the Department of Quiché, in Guatemala, the COVID-19 epidemic is popularly known as the coronavirus epidemic. Just as the name assigned to the disease does not fully correspond to reality, neither did a series of beliefs and practices that affected the prevention of contagion and disease in the community. To counter false information, 48 radio spots were created with the education-entertainment technique, in Spanish and Ixchil, which present daily scenes of risk of COVID-19 contagion in the community. Each message problematizes and solves a specific situation of risk and prevention of COVID-19. The topics to be discussed in the radio spots were determined through non-participant observation and a survey distributed on WhatsApp, given that in-person interviews or focus groups could not be conducted due to COVID-19. Two of the researchers observed the community to identify spaces and places where people gather and recorded whether or not these people used face masks and if they kept the recommended distance for COVID prevention. The WhatsApp questionnaire was sent to a list of the researchers' community contacts, and the snowball technique was used to increase that number of participants. The questionnaire asked about customary activities and practices that continued to occur in the community, despite their high risk for the transmission of COVID-19. Myths and protective behaviors were also explored. The results reported that the places with the highest concentration of people were outside the banks and the market. Massive parties organized to celebrate the first year of age of boys and girls, wearing the face mask below the nose or refusing to use it were identified among the social practices of greater risk. Based on what was learned from the formative research, the team of researchers wrote 24 scripts in which a group of characters represented common scenarios for the risk of contracting COVID-19. The main character and leader of the stories was Pedro Francisco, his wife Teresa, and Jacinto, Pedro Francisco's best friend. We will now listen to the script in English of one of the spots followed by its audio in Spanish and Ixil. Script number 1. Teresa has a bad experience in the market. Together, to stop the coronavirus. How are you doing? I'm Pedro Francisco, and my wife is upset. Teresa, I'm telling you, Pedro Francisco, that today I went to the market and had a bad time. Pedro Francisco, why? Teresa, because an irresponsible woman yelled at me. Pedro Francisco, how that happened? Teresa, I noted that the woman was not wearing a mask and I told her not to come near me, so she came up to me and told me that she wasn't sick to go around making such nonsense. Pedro Francisco, putting on the mask properly and keeping distance are important to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. People have to understand it. Pedro Francisco, remember, if it's time to go out, it's time to take care of yourself. Now let's listen to the Spanish radio spot. Teresa had a bad experience in the market.
Juntos a detener el coronavirus.
¿Cómo les va? Soy Pedro Francisco. ¿Y mi mujer? Hoy está molesta.
Te cuento, Pedro Francisco, que hoy fui al mercado y pasé un mal momento.
¿Por qué?
Porque una vieja irresponsable me gritó.
¿Y eso?
Fíjate que la mujer no traía mascarilla y le dije que no se acercara a mí. Entonces se me acercó y ella me dijo que no estaba enferma para andarse poniéndose esas babosadas.
Mira, Teresa, ponerse bien la mascarilla y guardar distancia son importantes para prevenir el contagio del coronavirus. La gente lo tiene que entender. Shh, shh, shh. Acuérdate, si toca salir, toca cuidarse.
Un mensaje del Ministerio de Salud en colaboración con el apoyo del pueblo de los Estados Unidos y Radio Ishil.
Now let's listen to the Ichil language version.
Kamnitale, Ine inlulas. Aschak pinalivia kushkaleta jel.
Abi lulas. Tukbalse, uachel katbeshin tukayibal. Aschuk chitube katumbalebe.
Kampi?
Hite bauma la chukat yok onin.
Kamstire?
Danieli mascarilla chuek omalstan. Askatbal beti chuba yeli hets opsantik chu sunkat. At kushkatbili tsa chu nale. Askati yok enchu. Yel chom at sunkat. Aqal wala kushbukso ets qayile. Tash chus behnale.
Kam chiteshiteres. Stulu wala chitkoksetok mascarilla di hikil. Hasta ku hetzer khip katzahkata shaol. Aetabe banwa yela okuk chomesqi. Qong chitpalo sholes-tul. Ulsa sakul. Asola el chulash. La chit el eb.
Ay umalu chumpal ni taqelu ilolisuchil tichahil tuk biloshpal utename Estados Unidos as radio ishil.
Neba is an area that produces looms, and during the pandemic they made masks with their original fabrics. For this reason, it was necessary to promote the correct way to create a mask with textiles. This spot is an example of what was promoted.
Juntos a detener el coronavirus.
Hola vecinos, soy Chonita y soy comerciante. Mira Jacinto, estas son las mascarillas que le compré a esa Teresa para vender en el mercado.
Están muy bonitas con la tela típica de aquí.
Sí, son muy lindas, pero lo mejor es que las mascarillas están hechas con 3 capas.
¿Cómo es eso de las 3 capas?
Verás, te explico Jacinto, que la capa que va por afuera es la tela típica. En medio va una capa de tela de poliéster y al final viene la capa de tela de algodón, que es la que más absorbe.
Ah, para eso es. Si uno tose o estornuda, las gotas de saliva se quedan ahí, en la capa de algodón.
Así es. ¿Qué hice yo para tener al marido más chispudo del pueblo?
Ahora ya lo sabe. Solo use mascarilla típica que tenga 3 capas.
Shh, shh, shh. Acuérdate, si toca salir, toca cuidarse.
Un mensaje del Ministerio de Salud en colaboración con el apoyo del pueblo de los Estados Unidos y Radio Ishil.
Hola chito la mahonibatsu shamanchome coronavirus.
Caché, es un vecino, y ne hinchonita, as incayinal. Y la chas, aunque mascarilla va, katunlok shock terese, akalubalong kayituk aybal.
Acha, achtuka, tung acheme wetets kutenam.
Achabachtu, bibani lo mascarilla va, tan oshpatulko anultets.
Kam tokka tudugwe inala di oshwatsulko?
Abib ashas, tukbali suchilse, ukoe ube atel stiele, a ube chemel, tukbeti poco ochpal, a u poliéster chosti, astubeti mostel, a bete ukoe ube chinamchtu, tantiti la ushkat kushevane.
Ah, echi chakla be batabe. Aso atoma ushil ni tsohne monitisna be, as nikushikai kanutal zubetite, we at katuchiname.
Anchteta, kamchteri katumana, uba oli malchtalunzumele katunlehtitza.
Ile ket otil bechel. Akshu mascarilla la bambe, uwa oshpatul koop anolbetets. Shh, ulsa sakul, asola el chulash, la chit el eb.
Ay umalu chumpal ni taqelu ilolisuchil tichahil, tuk biloshpal utename Estados Unidos as Radio Ishil.
For more than a year, radio spots with characters and stories from the community contributed to promote and educate the population on how to prevent COVID-19 in Guatemala. The funding source of this project was the U.S. Agency for International Development and was carried out with the participation of Enriqueta Valdez Curiel from the Centro Universitario del Sur of the University of Guadalajara, Patricia Poppy from Johns Hopkins University, Miguel Brito, and the people of Guatemala.